Hi, I'm Tabi Gwiji. Welcome to SABC News' 8th episode of the podcast series In First Person, where we capture first-hand accounts of traumatic experiences and the often challenging journey to survival.
In First Person, the journey from trauma to survival.
Rape is the unlawful sexual intercourse and penetration by a sex organ, other body part, or foreign object without the consent of the victim, according to dictionary.com. According to the Institute of Security Studies, a study of gang rape cases reported to police in inner city Johannesburg in 1999, although fairly old, provides new insights into a disturbing phenomenon. The most striking thing about these rapes is their predatory nature. Typically, groups of men either lie in wait for their victims or actively drive around looking for someone to abduct. Their attacks are also brazen and violent. Women are confronted in public spaces, and the use of force increases with the number of perpetrators involved in the rape.
Coming up.
And we get to the room, and he says, "You must take off your clothes." At first, I actually laughed, but a very lazy laugh, that very confused, lazy laugh. And the one goes out and comes back with a knife, and he's carrying this huge knife. My life after that was, I think, like the script of The Hangover. It was just messy.
In this episode, we follow the story of Peterson, who was gang raped at knife point and contracted HIV from this ordeal.
It was the year 2000. I was invited to a braai with two of my friends in the upper east side of Pretoria, very posh places. Went to this braai, and it was high school kids mainly, 17, 18-year-olds and a few varsity kids. And we got to the braai, we chilled, people were drinking and smoking. I wasn't drinking or smoking at that point. And there was this guy they were trying to hook me up with prior to us going to the braai anyway. I met this guy, he was a very nice guy. I still stand by that statement. On that day, he was a very nice guy.
Rehabs.com states that sexual assault and substance abuse are frequently intertwined for a number of reasons. First, drugs and alcohol may be used to facilitate sexual assault. Second, the trauma of being a victim of sexual abuse or assault may lead to use of drugs or alcohol to cope.
People were taking cocaine and drinking. Very taboo at that point, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and it didn't bother me because it was not my scene. At some points around 2 a.m., I get hungry. There was a Steers that used to be open 24 hours in Pretoria on Esland Street. And I tell him that I'm hungry. And he said, "Okay, fine, let's go get food." And we went, and there were 6 of us in the car. It's me and the 4 guys at the back and him driving. We get to the Steers, we get the burger and chips, and he says he wants to go see his friend. He has a flat somewhere around Sunnyside. So we go to Sunnyside, to the flat. We get in. I sit in the living room. I'm watching TV and I'm eating my burger. And they're in the room. I don't know what they're doing. They're chatting. I'm not bothered. I'm not even concerned. I mean, these were guys that were speaking much better English than I could ever speak, prep guys. So after a while, one of them comes and he says, "Come inside." And I'll go to the room. Still naive. I don't know what's waiting for me in the room. I'm just assuming that's where the party's moving to. And we get to the room, and he says, "You must take off your clothes." But I didn't understand why I should take off my clothes because I don't know you guys. And what kind of party is this? So at first, I actually laughed, but a very lazy laugh, that very confused, lazy laugh. And the one goes out and comes back with a knife, and he's carrying this huge knife. And the first thing that came to my mind, because I even said it out loud, was, "Wow, that knife is bigger than the one we have at home." And they said, "We don't want to make this very difficult for you. It's just going to be sex." And at that point, I was still a virgin. So I was very confused that sex for the first time has to be with six guys that I don't even know, and it's going to be rape.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, which is sometimes called shell shock, may lead to the victim feeling numbed emotionally. In one case study recorded by the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, or SADAG, a victim of rape said for some time following the crime, she referred to and thought of the actual incident in a very intellectual manner, as if it had happened to someone else. Aged 17, this was to be the worst experience of Kay's life.
What happened next was that the one pinned me down onto the bed, and then the one started penetrating me. But the other one was carrying a knife. So it's basically, one has a knife almost to my neck, the one has pinned down my arms, and the one is penetrating me. And it happened when all six of them were done. So it was six guys that took turns raping me over and over again. We didn't have a conversation afterwards. I think more than anything, I was still very numb because, first of all, I didn't scream or make any sound during the whole ordeal. Because of shock, I think more than anything, I was beyond shocked. There wasn't so much conversation with me, but I know the one guy, the one that was supposedly my hookup, couldn't even look at me in the eye. And I just didn't understand. Like, it didn't make sense. So in my mind, I kept trying to replay how we ended up here. So after that, they asked me to get dressed, which I did. And we all got back in the car and went back to the braai. But they were still normal. You know, they were having a conversation amongst themselves. And I'm a very talkative person. So on the way to getting the food, I was the loud one. And all of a sudden I was quiet. But I don't think at that point they saw anything wrong with it, because for them it was just sex. Yes, it was just sex.
According to helpguide.org, it can be extraordinarily difficult to admit that you were raped or sexually assaulted. There's a stigma attached. It can make you feel dirty and weak. You may also be afraid of how others will react. Will they judge you?
So we got to the braai, where the place where the braai was, and one of my friends noticed that something is wrong. She says, in her words, she says, I looked very grey. And she came up to me and she asked me what's wrong. And I still couldn't speak. I think I was speechless and I was in pain. I was in physical pain because this is the first time I'm having sex and it's with six guys and, you know. So I go with her to the bathroom and I'm not crying still. I don't think I cried, for a while. And I just told her that we need to go to the police station. And she didn't ask me why, which I appreciate. At that point, there were no Ubers, and we are 17, 18, we don't have cars. So we usually used to move around with a specific maxi cab that we'd call. So we called him, and he came to pick us up, and he took us to the police station to go report the rape.
If you have been raped or sexually assaulted, you can report this to the police. It is your choice whether to report, but if you do not report, then your case will not be investigated or prosecuted. RapeCrisis.org advises the following procedure: calling the police, making a statement, the medical examination, the trial, and maybe trying support organizations.
So we get to the police station and it's me and my friend, these two tiny little black girls in shorts, because it was summer. And this very Afrikaner policeman came to us and he asked us what's wrong. And my friend just said, I don't know, but something is wrong with her. And he took us into I think it's an, what do you call it? Interview room. Yes, I think it's an interview room. So they took us there and he called a female cop. And he says he did that because we look so out of place, because it's the weekend, it's 7 a.m. and usually it's drunk people and unruly crowds. And we don't look like there's something physically wrong with us, but something must be wrong for us to be there at that time. And we speak to the policeman and the policewoman at the same time. and they ask us for the address, and I stay behind while my friend takes them back to where the party was. So at that point, my friend leaves with the male cop, and then I stay with the female cop, who then has to call my parents, who were on holiday. They were away on holiday in PE. So they have to call them to come back to Pretoria.
Netcare advises the following medical examinations following a rape. Your treating doctor should make notes of any injuries you have sustained and assess the age of those injuries. This is very important, as the defense will likely claim you sustained the injuries earlier. She or he will do an internal examination, take semen samples, take pubic hair samples, and do an AIDS test to see if you were HIV negative at the time of the attack.
What happened next is then I have to be taken to a district hospital to be tested, to get samples, medical evidence, as they call it. So I leave, but my dad then calls our family doctor to please go with me to the hospital, who was like a second dad to me. So he comes with to the hospital. So we meet up at the hospital, and he shows them that he's a doctor, and he asks permission to do the test himself, because it's a very sensitive thing and a lot has happened, and I need somebody, a safe face and a safe person, I guess, around me at that point. So he does the test, but with the other doctor and a policewoman in the room to get the evidence. And he's just sitting there, and I'm still, I think, in shock and numb, and I'm still not crying. And back at the police station, my friend has identified the 6 guys that I'd left with, and now they are being... And then what's also very important to note is that at that time, this is 20 years ago, ARVs were not being given to rape victims. So it was still a big issue, I think, in Parliament. They were still fighting. It was the late Minister, Shabalala Msimang. So it was still a big hoo-ha. So I did not get ARVs on that day when I went to test to get medical evidence, but you get tested immediately. And then my doctor said to me, please come back after 3 months so we can retest and see what's going on.
Although broken and confused, Kay tried to get back to life as she remembered, and she sought therapy.
I didn't go back after 3 months. I think at that point I was trying to live my life as normal as possible. It's my matric year. I'm not 18 yet. I am attending court cases, and so I try to, I think, go back to a normal lifestyle. So I didn't go back, which I guess doesn't really make a difference now in hindsight, but I didn't go back after 3 months. So I carried on with my life as best as I could. I started going to therapy, and I was going to court, but the court case wasn't that lengthy as well, because it wasn't that hard to prove, and so it wasn't a lengthy court case. So it wasn't like 3 years of going to court. We're done in like 8 months. Before I finished my matric year, we're done with the court case.
Criminal Law Amendment Act 105 of 1997 compels courts to impose minimum sentences for certain crimes unless compelling circumstances justify a lesser sentence. The Act sets the prescribed minimum sentence of life imprisonment for crimes related to aggravated murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated compelled rape. Aggravated rape refers to particularly brutal rapes where, for example, the victim is raped more than once, while compelled rape means forcing someone else to rape a victim. Meanwhile, the Act states that the first-time rape offenders, without any aggravating factors, will receive a minimum sentence of 10 years. Second offenders will receive a minimum of 15 years, with that number increasing to 25 years for third offenders.
They were given 12 years each. They were in prison, not for that long. 2 died while in prison. and then the others are out. So they were out, I think, 7, 8 years. I did go to see them in prison, so I needed to do that for myself because for the longest time I struggled with what exactly happened and how do we get there. So for a while, they come from good families. I think that's what we must first establish. So for a while, their parents were really, really trying to be very supportive towards me and calling me and asking me if I need anything. And one of them, the parents said, they really want to see you. Because they first started with the letters, but then my therapist was like, when you're ready to go, we'll go together. And I think after like 4 or 5 years, I was ready to go. And I went and I saw them and we spoke. Are they remorseful? I think yes. They're remorseful because they were in prison and because it ended up that way. But had it not ended up that way, I don't think for the longest time they thought that they did anything wrong.
Sexual violence plays a significant role in HIV infection and depression according to health.org.za. Violent or forced sex can increase the risk of transmitting HIV. In forced penetration, abrasions and cuts commonly occur, thus facilitating the entry of the virus into the bloodstream, says the World Health Organization. This was Kay's new reality.
Fast forward to the next year. So this happened early 2000. So fast forward to 2001, I'm doing my first year in tertiary. And my mom's a nurse. And at that point, I'm still not sexually active in a consensual manner, basically. I haven't had sex with anyone since the rape. And the rape was not really having sex with anyone. At school, I'm trying to live a very normal life as best as I could. And we out for supper with my parents. I remember that Friday very, very well. It's my parents, it's my sister and my cousin that was staying with us. So they're busy playing in the jungle gym. And my mom comments on lumps, like lymph nodes. Are they called lymph nodes? Could be making this up. But lumps on my throat, outer throat, and behind my ear. And I've lost weight. I've gone from a size 32 to like a size 28 or whatever. And my mom says to me, and I'll never forget those lines. The kids are playing and it's her and me and my dad. And I can't eat and I've got like blisters on my tongue. My mom says, you must go see Peter. Peter is the doctor that was there the very first time that got the medical sample. You must go see Peter tomorrow. And I'm like, why? And she's like, I don't know, I think you're HIV positive. And I'll never forget it because I gave her the strangest look in the world. Like, how did we get there? Like, we are having supper. How could I be HIV positive? I haven't had sex with anyone. And I go the next day as my mom asked. So I go to the doctor and I walk in. And I think I've said that he's like a father to me. So I walk into the room. And immediately when I walk in, his face drops. And I knew, without him having said anything, that, okay, this might be true. So I walk in, his face has dropped, and he gives me a hug. And we start talking, and then he takes my blood samples. And as I leave, I'll never forget the words he said. As I leave, he says to me, your parents are still using the same numbers, right? But he calls them by both their names. And I'm like, yes. And I left, which was weird because he's their friend. I know him through them. So obviously he knows the number. But I think he was also so shocked that this is what it's come to. So my parents are home and my dad is not looking very well. He's got tears in his eyes. You can see he's been crying. My mom's also home. And I already know that something is really wrong. But first, in my head, I'm still thinking maybe somebody died in the family. That's why they're both home. I'm not thinking what just happened really is a result of all this. So I walk in and they sit me down and they close the door and they proclaim that undying unconditional love for me, which I found very weird because that's what parents should have anyway, but that's another topic. And they tell me how much they'll always love me and how proud they are of me. And as I'm sitting there, I just kept thinking, wow, I'm going to be dead before I'm 21. Like, that's all I kept thinking as they were giving me the speech. I'm going to be dead before I'm 21. I'm going to be dead before I'm 21. And then I'm like, oh, I have to go back tomorrow to Dr. Peter to go get my results. And my mom says, nope, you can't go alone. And then, like every single moment that day was just like confirming what my mom had said and confirming our biggest fears. So the next day I go with my dad because my mom couldn't take a day off. She had to go back to work, go with my dad, and we get there and Dr. Peter asked to speak to my dad first, which is normal. They're childhood friends and they speak. And then after that, they call me in and they just say to me, you're HIV positive.
Rapecrisis.org.za states that behavioral symptoms in response to rape include behaviors that are not typical of the survivor's normal behavior. Survivors are usually aware of these changes but feel powerless to change them. The behaviors can often be observed by people close to the survivor. They may include new sleeping patterns and eating patterns, crying more than usual, feeling trapped and unsafe, and therefore unable to socialize. Survivors sometimes use drugs and increase their alcohol intake in a futile attempt to forget what happened to them.
At that time, I'm being totally honest, the first thing I thought was, I need a drink. Because I wasn't drinking, and I thought, I'm not going to go to heaven without not knowing what alcohol really tastes like. So my first thought was, I really need a drink. But more than anything, I thought, no, I'll be dead by 21. So, these are my last days. I must live them to my fullest. My life after that was, I think, the script of The Hangover. It was just messy. Messy in a way that I think I was living to die. So I wasn't really interested in a future because for as far as I was concerned, my future wasn't there. It was limited. It was going to end soon. So I was drinking. Oh my gosh. I salute my liver every single day because it's like, wow, you did that. So I was drinking a lot. Mentally, I was just numb. I was just drinking. I don't know how else to put it in such a way that it makes sense that I don't know what I was doing, but I was just drinking. Physically, my parents got me a virologist. Dr. Baraldi is the best virologist in South Africa. They got me to go to him, and he gave me these meds, and my weight was back on, and that's it. So physically, I was okay, and till today, physically, I haven't had anything that is related to the virus. But mentally, it was I think the biggest challenge. Spiritually, obviously we all grow up with a relationship with God because of the Black families that we grew up in. But at that point, I stopped. I was like, no, I don't know who this God is. I don't know him. And on most days, more than most, I think I was carried by people's love for me. And I was just scared of disappointing them. There are so many days where I just was like, no, this can't be it. I'm done. But I was scared of disappointing my parents because I could see that they've done so much and they are doing so much and they continue to do so much even 20 years later. So, it was just a mess. It took me a very long time to actually say I conquered it, if that makes sense. But no, it wasn't the best version of me. I was not the best version of myself at all.
According to healthline.com, a nervous or mental breakdown is a term used to describe a period of intense mental distress. During this period, you are unable to function in your everyday life. There isn't one agreed upon definition for what defines a nervous breakdown. It is generally viewed as a period where physical and emotional stress become intolerable and impairs one's ability to function effectively.
But when I turned 30, I had a mental breakdown. And I think that was my wake-up call. So my 20s basically were, if you ask me, they were non-existent. They were just a whole party. Like, let's drink, let's get drunk, let's just live, you know? That's it. 30, I think as I was approaching 30, it was my first wake-up call. That, wait, what have you done with your life? You are here. Clearly you're not dead. And you dropped out of varsity twice. No, 3 times, you know? And you were like the smart one. And you were probably most likely to succeed. But you haven't done anything. Yes, I was working, and I was working for a very, I had a very prominent job in government and working at the top office, traveling a lot because of work. But I wasn't fulfilled. I felt like I don't know who I am. I don't know who this person is. I felt like a shadow of myself. So I had my first breakdown. I think it was my first, how do I put it? My first proper look into my mental health instead of my physical, because for as long as physically I was okay, everyone just thought, oh no, but she's okay because physically she's okay. She's here, she's at parties, she's planning parties, she's drinking, she's with everyone, she has a boyfriend, she has, but mentally I was not okay. And then I had to be admitted to a clinic because I stopped everything. Like everything just stopped. I stopped going to work, I stopped eating, I stopped everything. And I was admitted to Vista Clinic in Pretoria. And that was the first time I had to really come to terms with my demons, everything that I had put on a shelf, everything that I had put away and decided it is what it is, it's whatever. And having my therapist tell me that, but you're still that 17-year-old girl. You never actually healed. Nobody actually saved you. You just had this traumatic thing happen to you and you carried on with life. You never actually dealt with it. And you've never actually grown. So I think that then changed the course of my life and my actions for the better. On most days. Sometimes, yes, obviously, I will regress, and there are days when it's harder than other days, but that's just life. But it was at that point that everything started making sense. And there's this poem that they recite on Antoine Fisher, Who Will Cry for the Little Boy. So it's that poem every day that me and my therapist would work through all the time, about who will cry for the little girl that dies inside of me. Because I felt like, no offense to anyone, my parents, my friends, my everything, but I felt like nobody actually was there, cried for me at that point. Like nobody spoke to the 17-year-old that went through all that.
Recovering from sexual assault takes time, and the healing process can be painful. But you can regain your sense of control, rebuild your self-worth, and learn to heal. Helpguide.org suggests the following. Open up about what happened to you. Cope with feelings of guilt and shame. Prepare for flashbacks and upsetting memories. Reconnect to your body and feelings and stay connected. Kay found her healing, and her story offers hope to other women who have fallen prey to gang rape and other forms of sexual violence.
What I've learned in my 30s, and I still continue to learn, especially that I'm 5 days away from 38, is that you need to make peace with what has happened to you. Because for as long as you try and change the circumstances and what happened, then you'll never be at peace. Does it have to be a good story for you to be at peace with? No, but you have to make peace with it. So the first thing I had to do was, I would say, love my virus. Because remember, in my 20s, I wasn't given an option of hating it. I was very fortunate, and I always say this, I'm very fortunate that I was surrounded by people and protected by people that made sure that the virus does not make me any different from them. And I've dated men that have made it very clear that it does not make you any different from who we are. So that's the first thing. So I was in a very protective environment. But now I'm okay with it. I love my virus. I'm a long-term progressor. I think that's the other advantage. That means that it's going to take forever. We are one of the few people, there are few people that the virus takes forever to actually start doing any damage. So I'm one of the lucky few. But now I've started my ARVs, so that won't even happen. And I started them because my doctor was like, you know what? Let's not test fate. This virus has been so good to you. Let's not test fate. Let's just keep it under wraps forever. I started taking my ARVs in 2018, in March. Yes. I go to the doctor every 6 months just to check that my viral load is still undetectable. And then, so that one time he's like, why don't you start ARVs? It's just one pill. And I was like, no, I don't want to, because there's nothing wrong. My CD4 count is fine. And he's like, just take them so that we don't have to have issues in future. And yeah, I've been taking one pill every day at 8 o'clock in the evening. What healed me is facing my demons, is facing what actually happened and dealing with what actually happened. So therapy really helped. And the beauty about Vista Clinic is you stay there for 21 days. So they give you a program where you go to your therapist. So it's like a triangular, a trinity of, you get your meds from your psychiatrist, you get therapy from your psychologist, and then there's a pastor that prays. So I think that all worked for me in that 21 days. And they gave me tools to help me on days when I feel like I'm not okay, you know. I'm not on antidepressants or mood stabilizers. I stopped them, I think, 3 months after I left Vista, because I said to my psychiatrist, they make me feel numb, and I'm a very energetic person, and they really stabilize my moods, and I did not like that. But I did that with the promise that every time I feel like I'm drowning, I will call them and I will seek help. So healing is not a guaranteed forward movement. That's what I've realized. And I think that's my healing aspect at all times. That healing is a progress. Every day is a progress. I'm progressively healing, and I'm progressively finding a new way to see the light. And there will be bad days. I think people don't realize that saying you are conquering something or you've conquered something, there's no end to what you are conquering, because you don't finish healing, if I could put it like that. There's no end to healing. Healing is an everyday journey. And so I don't like saying that I've healed. I like saying that I've made peace with everything. And the reason I've made peace, I think the reason I've made peace with it is because the alternate does not give me peace. Not making peace with it does not give me peace. So I had to find strength to make peace with it, and to realize that I'm going to have bad days, and I'm going to have days where it doesn't make sense, and I'm going to have nightmares. I still do have nightmares sometimes, and I have days where I'm sitting and wallowing in self-pity. That's what people need to realize, that it's normal. So just because you go through that does not mean that you are not moving forward. It does not mean that you are not winning this journey that you're on. It does not mean that your victory is elusive. It just means that you are human, and as a human being, you went through something that changed your life forever. And because of that, there will be days where you will be reminded. But healing is moving forward all the time.
Thank you for listening. You can visit sabcnews.com or at SABC News on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube for the latest episode of In First Person. For SABC Digital News, I'm Ntabi Gwiji.